In this video, we are going to study supervised versus unsupervised learning. Before moving on to supervised versus unsupervised learning, let's first look at the statistical learning. Statistical learning is basically the set of statistical tools to understand the data much better. Now, let's say we have a response variable, say y. Y is the response variable. We have a set of x, that is x1, x2 till xp. These are all the predictors or the independent variable. Then we can say that y is a function of x plus epsilon, where epsilon is the error term and f is an unknown function. Now, statistical learning actually refers to the set of approaches for estimating this particular f. Now, let's say we have the estimate of y as y hat and which is equal to f hat x. Now, y minus y hat is equals to fx plus epsilon minus f hat x. Now, expectation of y minus y hat whole square, which is equals to expectation f of x plus epsilon minus f hat x square. Now, this is equals to expectation of f of x minus f hat x square plus variance of epsilon. Since we know that covariance of x comma epsilon is equals to 0 and also expectation of epsilon is equals to 0. Now, this particular equation is actually reducible error. What do I mean by reducible error? This is the error which can be reduced if we take a better estimate of f. That is, if we change the model through which we are estimating f, then we can reduce this particular error. And then we have the irreducible error, that is variance of epsilon. This is called an irreducible error since it will always provide an upper bound on the accuracy of our prediction on y. Statistical learning has two parts. That one of them is supervised and one of them is unsupervised learning. Now let's look at supervised learning in detail. So, like the name itself suggests, that there is a supervisor present in this particular learning. Supervise means to observe and direct the execution of a task, like a teacher in a particular class. Now let's say you have to teach a 2-year-old what are things. Now you'll show him this particular spoon and you'll try to tell him that this is actually a spoon. You'll show him the bottle and you'll tell him that this is the bottle. This is a supervised learning since you already know the output, that is the spoon or the bottle in this case. Now let's look at the formal definition of statistical learning, that is building a statistical model for predicting, estimating an output based on one or more inputs. These particular inputs are also known as predictor variable or independent variables, and this particular output is also known as response variable or the dependent variable. Now let's understand what is unsupervised learning. So as the name itself suggests, that there is no particular supervisor present as in the case of supervised learning. So let's say that now let's take the same example that we have. We have a 2-year-old and we want him to identify the things. We want him to place the similar kind of things into one group. So we'll show him this particular thing, and since this particular image is actually different from this particular image, these will be classified into two different categories. So this is basically, we are looking at the data and we are learning the structure of the data and we are making some conclusion that these two belong to different groups. Now let's look at the formal definition of the unsupervised learning. So there are input variables but no supervising output. Supervising output, as in the case of supervised learning, we have y as the output variable. So in this particular case, we do not have this particular output variable. Now, through this particular type of learning, we can learn about the relationships and structure from the data itself. Now let's consider some applications of supervised learning. Like you have seen in Google Photos, if you click on the search button, then it shows you different groups of photos that belong to different groups. Like for example, we have beach photos grouped into a different folder that is for the beach photos only. Then we have food photos that is grouped into food photos only. So how does this mechanism works? So basically there is an algorithm which has been trained by showing the beach photos and then suggesting that it is a beach, by showing the food photos and suggesting that it is food. That's how the model has been trained, and whenever we add some photos, that is the test data, it gets allocated into beach photos, food photos, or something like that. This is called image classification. Some other examples of supervised learning are risk assessment by financial or insurance industries, fraud detection, that is 0 1 if the fraud is there or not. Now let's look at some of the applications of unsupervised learning also. So one of the examples are customer segmentation, basically segmenting the customers based on their shopping needs. We have semantic clustering, we have identifying accident prone areas, we have delivery store optimization as well. Now let's look at some of the algorithms that we consider in supervised learning and unsupervised learning. So in supervised learning, as you see here, we have linear regression, decision tree, random forest, support vector machine, etc. So all of these algorithms use some input variables to predict or estimate the output variable. Now for unsupervised learning, we have k-means clustering, PCA, neural networks, hierarchical clustering also. In this case, we do not have an output variable, but we have all the input variable. Then we draw some structure or relationship out of the input variables. That's it for supervised and unsupervised learning. Thank you.